What's up, YouTube? ODST General back again with some Star Trek New Horizons. Probably the best Star Trek game to date, which is saying something because it's actually a mod. Now, if you guys are familiar with this, you may just want to skip over this video because this, I'm just going to be talking about the mod, kind of where it's at now. I believe I've shown this off on my channel quite some time ago, earlier on. It's in development. I've definitely shown it off on my secondary channel. I actually just got done recording this video, and I know every once in a while you'll hear me say I re-recorded it because I didn't like this or that. I've had some audio issues, and you may have noticed it in some of my videos, and some of the ones that are yet to come out, you'll probably definitely notice it. It sounds like I've got a voice changer on. I have no idea what was going on with the audio. In fact, I missed it at first. Like, I just thought maybe my microphone audio, like, levels had been raised. Something else really weird was going on. I seem to have fixed it, at least from the testing I just did a little bit ago. But it was so jarring in this video, I just had to re-record it because it was so awful sounding. Like, the audio was cutting out, and just, like, my voice was really deep like this, and I sounded really weird. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this game now. Now, like I said, this is a mod for Stellaris, but this is probably the best Star Trek mod / game to date because it's so all-encompassing. You know, I'm a big Star Trek fan, but I don't do it a lot on the channel because people don't generally respond quite as well to it as some of my other content like Halo or, you know, any of the first responder content. But with that being said, I do really want to talk about this mod. I think it deserves the attention from my bigger channel, not my channel with like 5 subscribers. So, you know, I play Star Trek Online, and it's got a lot of content like this does, but the way it's implemented is much more jarring because you go in there, you know, and say you go onto a station like Deep Space Nine, and you'll see 30 or 40 different uniforms and species and stuff like that, and just you'll see people who are playing stuff that feels out of place, you know, and they've all got their own, you know, headcanon for their character, or maybe they don't, maybe they're just playing because it's fun, but everybody looks different. It feels very jarring. It doesn't feel quite right. And well, it's awesome that you can get like an Enterprise era costume, and you can play as like an Enterprise crew and the NX-01, or now the NX-01 refit. Just, it all feels very out of place seeing that like next to like a guy who's playing as like the Next Generation, or a guy who's playing like a Zoidberg or something from Futurama. And this one, it does this much better. Yes, it's got probably just as much, maybe a little bit less content, but it's pretty close. You know, where they've got all these different ships and stuff, but it feels right. It feels in place. You know, when you see Enterprise era ships, the other people, the other species, are using the ships they used during the Enterprise era. You know, and I mean, they might move up at a little bit different frame, you know, time pace. I mean, you might not exactly get your Next Generation ships exactly when they were started in the Next Generation, but it's designed to be pretty close. You know, and then the other thing is just all the different species that are in here. I mean, you've got your classics like the humans, the Klingons, Romulans. You've got the Ferengi, and then you've got some smaller ones like the Husnock, who only appeared in like a single episode, and they've got their own custom ship. You know, you've got the Kazon, which are slightly bigger, you know, Tholians, Vidians. You know, so some of these species you just see as like one-off characters in like an episode of the Next Generation, like the Binars. You know, others you see a little bit more, like the Denobulans, you know, Phlox. And yeah, they're all fairly unique, some more than others, of course. Just with so many, a lot of these characters are using kind of like generic ships, but you know, maybe the one will use like this kind of ship, but they use proton weapons. I think everybody uses warp travel. I don't think I've seen a species that uses a different form of travel than warp, just because that's, you know, Star Trek's big thing. But you know, all these species, they've got, you know, different play styles. You know, there's different things about them. You know, for instance, the Temerians, when you actually encounter this species, you have to like decode what they say if you're playing as like the Federation and you meet them. You know, and they're xenophobes, but they're pacifists, so they don't really like anybody in their space, but they're not really going to attack you either. Versus, say, the Xindi, who are xenophobes, but they're you know, authoritarian, so they're much more likely to attack you. They're pretty good for the most part. But then there's also a ton of stuff from like the storylines and stuff. I was actually going to play as the Romulans in the original video, and they had some pretty cool stuff, and I like showing it off, but I think I want to actually stick with the Federation again. The only reason I didn't want to play as the Federation in the original video is because there's so many people who play as the Federation that I feel like if any of you guys have already seen this, you're already going to be familiar with the Federation. By the same token, I want to avoid the Borg because they're also really big right now. Because a big patch just recently came out that allowed the Borg to be a playable race where they could assimilate planets and stuff, but they play very differently than any other species in this because they can't colonize planets. They have to actually assimilate the planets, and I guess you get research bonuses based on the species you assimilate and whether or not you've assimilated them before and stuff like that. And then one other thing I want to show, if I can find him here, is the Kelpians were just added today. So the last update was about like 3 days ago, and they've already come out with a new one for Star Trek Discovery here. So this is one of the new Star Trek races being added on the TV show tonight that's coming out. It shows their location in the Beta Quadrant. And that's another thing, is that all these guys are listed as being in different quadrants because they're in different quadrants. That'll matter in a second when I kind of explain this a little bit more. Let's go ahead. We're going to go back up to Earth. So you don't actually start off as the Federation. You start off as United Earth. So you're just humanity by itself. And this is that's kind of a big deal too for a few reasons that I'll talk about as we go on here. So we've got a few different maps. So we've got your standard one is the Milky Way galaxy. This is the first official New Horizons map. This is the main one that they suggest you play on. It's 1,400 stars, 50 plus empires. This is all 4 quadrants, and everything's as canon as you can get it in this for placement. You know, it's maybe not perfect, but it's going to be as close as you're going to get. Then you've got just the alpha and beta quadrants, which this is the larger version of this 2 of these maps, which you've got 2 versions. This is just kind of your local stuff to like the next generation type of era stuff. You know, DS9 if you don't include all the Gamma Quadrant stuff. And then you've got one for just the Gamma Quadrant, which is where, you know, the Dominion and all those species are. And just the Delta Quadrant, which is, you know, Voyager. Then this is the next coolest, to me at least, is the Milky Way Galaxy Mirror version. So this is just the same thing as the main map, but it's flipped over. Now, if you guys are familiar with the TV show, I don't really need to explain the Mirror Universe, but for those of you who are not familiar with the TV show or the premise, I'm going to explain it really quick. Basically, when you say select United Earth, in the normal game, you're a friendly species, you are xenophiles, which means you like aliens, you know, you like making contact, you want to build a federation, you want to work together with all these other species. The game kind of drives that together, it's designed to drive you together with the immediate founders of the Federation, so the Andorians, the Tellarites, the Vulcans, all of them, and you're designed to basically design the Federation with them. In this, it flips the tables and it changes it, so basically it's not exactly opposite because the Mirror Universe isn't exactly opposite in the TV show. But basically, this is a different version of history where the Federation ended up killing the first Vulcans on Earth and stealing their ship and taking over the technology and using it to conquer the Vulcans because they thought the Vulcans were a invasion force and that those were their like scouts. So they go out and they enslave the Vulcans, they enslave the Andorians and the Tellarites and all these other species. And, you know, they end up advancing much further, you know, but there's a rebellion they're fighting. I'm not going to get too far into it, but suffice it to say it's a really interesting twist. If you guys are familiar with the Mirror Universe, it follows the storyline of Enterprise. An update bugged out my game, so I didn't get to get as far as TOS, but I'm assuming all the TOS and Deep Space Nine stuff is in there as well. This is the mirror version of the Alpha and Beta Quadrants. There isn't any for the Gamma or Delta Quadrants. And then this is Birth of the Federation style map. I have not played Birth of the Federation. I'm not exactly sure how this will work, but from what I understand, it's just like a squared off grid type of deal. And then these are the original maps. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do the standard Milky Way galaxy this time. So you've got a thing for habitable worlds. Primitive civilizations are off. This one kind of works out. You could do this off or on, really. Because, you know, it's Star Trek, there's a lot of alien species, and you could easily say there's one that you don't see, or it's primitive, so it's a minor species. So let's put that on like 0.25 or something, or even maybe 0.5. There's difficulty, AI aggressiveness, and Iron Man mode. Now in the normal game, there's also now an option for story mode. By default, story mode is on, and then you'll have an option to turn it off in game. When Q comes and talks to you, Q is the tutorial guide basically, so they've got a voice acted out Q who comes in and he'll help you out with various things, or you can tell him to shut up and go away and he'll quit bothering you. So there's customer just kind of talking about Earth's history, the Third World War, and Zefram Cochrane and all that stuff. Let's see what we've got. Let's get a main tactical station, a colony ship, and Starbase level 2. So we've got the Enterprise area uniforms on currently. And we've got our admiral here, he's a governor, so basically governors are all admirals. That's kind of interesting. Now you could make Earth a vassal. It seems that automatically makes him Mars governor too, so that's kind of interesting. That's good to know. You know, and then your people on your planets all change. So they've all got, you know, civilian clothing on. You know, your scientists are all wearing like the science colors for Starfleet. You know, and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of cool stuff they do. Some of it's bigger, some of it's smaller. So you get things like star bases. You know, you've got... Oh, see, we've already made contact with the Vulcans right away, and they want to migrate to our world. So that's actually, I think that's newer. I don't really know. I don't know when that was actually put in. Go away, Q.
Did we really have to start off?
He offers you 1 mineral. It's not that big of a deal. I don't know when this was changed. Originally, you actually had to find the Vulcans in this. You start out with the Vulcans, which makes sense because that's, you know, humanity got their warp drives from the Vulcans, basically. You know, that and Zefram Cochrane. You've got the USS Franklin. Now, if you watch Star Trek Beyond, you will know why the ship's significant. Basically, this was a old Starfleet science vessel, just like it is in here, that went missing, and it's the kind of the central plot point for Star Trek Beyond. Now, that's one of the reasons, like I said, this game really blends well the different forms of Star Trek. You know, so we've got something from the JJ verse, but it fits really well because they picked something that actually fits in with the kind of the aesthetics of the Enterprise era stuff. You know, if you look at these ships here on the other side of the Blinding Sun, nacelles are really big, but the nacelles are designed pretty similar. You know, and it looks very similar in design to that and like the NX-01 Enterprise. Just a tad bit different. So they're going to go off, they're going to do their own thing. You know, I don't really know what, and that's okay. Oh, man, so we got a really good roll on Earth's resources this time. We got 15 minerals, raw dilithium, and 5 energies. So that's like 900, though, because it's also spread out. Let's see, where's what? So let's go ahead. Let's get one station built over Jupiter's moon, and then one actually over Jupiter. Let's take a look at Earth. So we've got a bunch of different people working. I think that should be okay, yeah. Let's get him on a actual resource tile. And interestingly enough, there's a surface dilithium deposit. I don't think that was a thing the last time I played humans. So that's kind of interesting. One of the tricky parts of this is that when they put out patch notes, there's a lot of various bug fixes and changes and stuff like that, and they're not too detailed when they're talking about that sort of thing. So it makes it kind of tough to know exactly what they have and haven't changed. Mars is kind of interesting. So Mars has actually got an event. So when you start off, Mars is already colonized, but it's a it's only got like 50% habitability. So it's not a great planet. And then on top of that, you've got these tile blockers that you can't really get rid of, like the quicksand basin and this crater here. Well, you'll actually get technology for the Verteron array, which will actually allow you to terraform Mars. And while terraforming's been in the game, it's actually a specially designed mission that it gives you for Mars. So you actually get to terraform it. You go through like an event chain where they'll request energy, and you know, Mars will actually at one point split off on its own, depending on how you proceed through the story. Let's go ahead and get our fleet out and exploring. I'm always kind of weary about sending ships out. I used to just split them all up and send them out to scout faster. The only issue I have with that is they tend to die a lot when you run across something. I mean, I guess in that situation you're only losing 1 ship versus 3, but I feel like their chances are much better like this. I suppose at this point in the game it probably wouldn't make much difference because they've only got 156 damage. So the Vulcans already want to form a coalition with us, so they're actually the ones preceding this with us. We're going to go ahead and decline that for the time being.
Survey complete.
You know, that's kind of what I was talking about, is they really do push for you to be in a coalition and stuff like that. You don't have to accept, you're not forced to. I mean, depending on, like I said, the path of the game, things might change radically, and that's actually something I did start to talk about and then decided to talk about later, so let's go ahead and talk about that. The game diverges, or the mod diverges from the known history of Star Trek and stuff like that, where you might get an event like saving or stopping the whale probe from the Star Trek movies. And in the movies, basically how that happens is they go back in time and they get whales from LA after they get released in the ocean. They beam them up into the ship. They set up a tank for the whales in the ship, and then they beam them down to Earth so that when the whale probe is looking for the whales, it finally finds them, communicates, and then leaves. But this, you can handle that a lot of different ways. You could try to destroy the whale probe. It's very powerful, and it dampens your fleet's power, so you're actually doing less damage. But you can try to do that. You can try to destroy the whale probe. The advantage there, of course, being is that you know, you don't run the risk of altering history. You can choose to go back in time, like in the movie, at which point you're then confronted with a couple different options. You can choose to try and get the whales from LA, from the aquarium or wherever they were, or you can go to, I think it's like Iceland or something, and you can try to get them from there. You know, in my case, I went with the LA one because that's what happened in the movie. I was trying to kind of replicate the movie. But then when you go to LA, they say, well, do you want to try and take them from the aquarium, or, you know, SeaWorld or wherever it is, or do you want to wait until they're out in the ocean? I did it in the ocean, but all those have different effects. So if you, say, go to Iceland, when you come back to the future, history may have changed. Now, I think if you do it exactly like it's done in the movie, history remains mostly unchanged. I think there's a couple minor changes that are really hard to detect, but depending on how you proceed through the missions, the changes might have more or less impact. So that's something that's really cool about them, and it's not just history stuff or, you know, time travel that runs, you know, chances of like affecting how a thing goes. You know, as you're exploring through in the Enterprise era, you'll meet up with the Xindi, and you know, just like in the TV show, the Xindi will send a weapon to Earth. You know, that probe will actually attack Earth, and it will create a bunch of craters throughout Earth, and it can actually kill some of your pops. But then they'll send a bigger one, which is intended to destroy Earth, and you can actually lose Earth. Earth can be destroyed, and you know, the Federation may never come to be, or it might be a Federation without humanity, or maybe you end up with you know, different colonies or something. You know, maybe you've got your Mars colony, so that's, you basically have to start out with just Mars, and maybe you're the Terra Novans or something like in the TV show. Or maybe when Mars has its rebellion, you lose, or you side with the rebellion, and you become, you know, the Terra Nova movement or whatever it was called. And so instead of forming the Federation, you become more aggressive towards alien species. Maybe you don't stop the whale probe. Maybe the whale probe actually goes in and it alters. Hang on one second, guys. So I want to make sure they're actually jumping out of that system before they get killed. You know, maybe the whale probe does its thing, and actually the whale probe can actually change Earth. It will change how Earth's... I'm trying to remember what it's called, the class of Earth. So I think it changes it from like continental to ocean. So I think it's still class M, although I'm not sure. But it changes the habitability of Earth. It makes Earth less habitable for humanity. So maybe you have to leave Earth because you no longer inhabit it properly, or maybe you start losing control of it because of that. I mean, there's so many changes and there's so many opportunities to kind of relive some of these events. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure where they're at right now. Ross 154. Not sure what that really meant. I guess they're on an oceanic planet, so I guess they're just saying they came up and they're doing stuff, I guess. I don't know. It's basically a fancy way of saying there's a pre-sentient species we should observe there. But, you know, there's so many opportunities to relive the stories from the TV shows and the movies, and a lot of them will allow you to proceed differently. You know, maybe when you get probed, you know, there's an episode where Captain Picard gets probed by an alien probe, and he relives an entire second life. Now, in that, you know, basically he lived that second life, he woke back up on the bridge of the Enterprise, and he was fine, and he kind of went on with, you know, a new appreciation. You know, he had met a woman, he fell in love, she died, he died, you know, everybody died. But, you know, as far as he was actually concerned, he was only there, or as far as the rest of the crew was concerned, he was only out for a couple minutes and then back up and, you know, fine after that. You know, when you actually run into that event, you can recreate that, and you can, you know, keep the captain alive because, you know, and your captain might gain an experience boost, or you could choose differently, and the outcome will be different. Maybe he'll die. Maybe something else will happen. I mean, you really never know, and it's really cool to kind of explore some of these alternate effects that you can have, because it gives this mod a lot of replayability. I mean, Stellaris is a very replayable game in the first place. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the fast forward too. Stellaris is a very replayable game to begin with, and I mean, this just really ups the factor of replayability for it.
Technology discovered.
Throwing in a fast forward, just totally overwhelming me. So here's the Verteron array for Mars terraforming event. So we're going to go ahead and research that. I don't know if we'll have time to actually use it or not. Vulcan wants to form a defensive pact. You know what? Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and do that. It won't do me much good against the Xindi, though, because they don't actually recognize that like a war, so they won't come to help me fight that usually. But let's start getting a fleet up.
Survey complete.
I don't know if, you know, I've actually never really paid attention. I don't know if upgrading the starbase actually improves its damage.
Updated.
But yeah, they're constantly updating this, and they've been working on it for about like a year.
Complete.
But yeah, I mean, just lately especially, they've just been hammering stuff out like crazy, and I just really think that this is probably the best Star Trek game to date, because it blends everything so seamlessly, and it's almost all there. I mean, you know, you've got your movie characters and villains. You know, right now they're in the process of implementing hero characters and ships. So the Mirror Universe is probably the biggest one that you'll see this in as of right now. So if you're playing the Mirror Universe, you get the USS Defiant, which is its own fleet. Now, if you guys are familiar with In a Mirror Darkly, you'll know the Defiant is from the universe where I'm playing, and it's from the future, and it goes back in time. It gets captured by an alien race and pulled back into the past and alternate universe where they're trying to get its technology. And, oh... So the Franklin just got destroyed. That was surprising. So that's actually kind of an interesting thing right there, is because that shows you how things can be altered. My entire ship just got lost. My scientist and the Franklin got lost. Now I can build another ship and a scientist, Obviously, it's going to cost me to do that, but I can do it if I need to. But what's interesting about that is the fact that the Franklin has a mission based around Star Trek Beyond, where basically, you know, at some point you lose the Franklin, and then later on when you're searching throughout, you know, the galaxy will pop up again, and you'll actually have to
technology discovered.
Basically go through the events of Star Trek Beyond. But now that the ship's been destroyed before that, that event should never happen. The event should never be triggered since the Franklin never went down there. So that's kind of an interesting fact. That kind of really shows just how versatile this is. Let's go ahead and build a penal colony. But yeah, there's tons of stuff. So let's check out the ship designer real quick. I've only got the Neptune right now, which is kind of the base early game ship for the Federation. This is seen a couple of points very briefly in Enterprise, but you really don't get to see it too much. Hello, Andorians.
Initiating communications.
But it's very different compared to its regular Stellaris counterpart when it comes to ship design. Well, it might look pretty similar. What really sets this aside is the, I guess, kind of councils that it has. It's almost based off of Star Trek Online when it comes to these councils here. So you might get stuff like this in regular Stellaris, but probably not quite as much. You know, quite as many of these show up in the regular game. So you get a lot more things, you know, like ship hull plating and, you know, polarization and shields, stuff like that, new warp engines. But what really makes this unique is all the different versions of weapons. So, like, you get different councils, and only certain things can be used in these councils. So, like a nuclear reactor, for instance, which is the power source for my ship, if I need more power, I can throw this reactor in any kind of slot. I can use engineering, tactical, or science. However, armor plating, on the other hand, I can only use in an engineering slot, so I can only put this armor plating here. You know, and, you know, in the case of the emergency force field, if I wanted the plus 6% ship hull points versus the plus 2 armor, I could only put that here. I can't put that in the science. I can only put that in the engineering slot. You know, I've got the one science core here. That's all I've got. So it's pretty cool stuff, to be sure. I mean, it's definitely a lot more unique. Let's go ahead and save this design. So we've made contacts with the Romulans. They're not as nice as their counterparts in the Mirror Universe. What are you gonna do, though? So let's see here. We've got our first unity point for tradition. This does vary a little bit based on race. They just recently made some changes to this, so that it allows modders to actually make different things for it, I believe, if I understand correctly. So the Andorians have joined the Favorable League, which is the coalition with the Vulcans. The only reason I didn't want to join is because currently, with how it's working, is it's actually turning your Empire's borders the color of the Alliance. So if the Vulcans start the Alliance, your borders turn red. It doesn't look right when the Federation's red, not Federation blue.
Initiating communications.
So they're offering us association status in the coalition, but we're still going to deny it. I mean, like I said, this isn't supposed to be a full playthrough. This is just me kind of showing off the mod a little bit to you guys, kind of talking about why I'm so excited about it. It's just such a cool mod, and with a new Star Trek coming out tonight, this is the perfect time to start playing this. If you guys aren't fans of Star Trek, but you have Stellaris, check this out. If you don't have Stellaris, get Stellaris. Even if you don't like Star Trek, Stellaris is an awesome game. Just play the base game. It's got Star Wars mods, it's got Stargate, it's got all sorts of sci-fi stuff, and all sorts of other goofy things, like it's got aliens, and just all sorts of neat stuff. This is probably just the best mod for it, and the best Star Trek game / mod in general. Scientists leveled up. That's pretty cool. So another cool thing is that when you start getting aliens into your system, and I don't know if I'd have any at this point yet, probably not. Doesn't look like it. you actually start like absorbing them. You can actually start like getting them into Starfleet. So right now I'm still just humans, so all my characters are humans, but eventually it will start to like plop down aliens into your...
Initiating communications.
What's going on? Just another diplomatic
Technology
offer.
discovered.
They really want me to join. Like I said, they really push for that, so they'll get kind of annoying with that if you don't want to join.
Technology discovered.
But yeah, so it's really cool though, like I started to say, is when you get different species, you can actually set their different rights. So for humans, I don't think I can. Oh yeah, I can. I can set their rights. I can say, well, they're full citizens or whatever. I think in this, it only lets me do everybody as full citizenship for your initial race, and then for the other ones, you can kind of change it around.
Technology
But yeah, I'll start
discovered.
to say, well, okay, well, I've got Vulcan leaders now, so I can have a Vulcan be the leader of, you know, my army, and it'll appear as the Vulcan or Bullion or whoever, and then they'll actually start to appear in like Starfleet uniforms. So it's very cool to see all these different changes, and just little, like I said, it's little things too like that that really make up this mod. So I'm already going over my fleet cap, which is going to start to hurt my resources already. I've got just the one extra ship. He went all the way back to Earth, didn't he? He did. Well, that's fine. We're about to the point of wrapping it up. Anyways, guys, like always, in the comments below, let me know what you guys think of this mod. You know, I've been doing this on my secondary channel, Prime Directive, but that's something that never really took off. I only did a few episodes from it because I was supposed to have a couple of friends who said, oh yeah, we'll help you out, that never came to. I did start to upload some videos recently with that microphone issue I previously mentioned there, but I feel that this mod and that this game needs to be in front of a bigger audience because it really deserves it. It really hits home what a good Star Trek game is. I mean, possibly the best Star Trek game. I would say that. You know, there's a lot of awesome Star Trek games. There's Bridge Commander, there's the new Bridge Crew. You know, Star Trek Online even has its moments here and there, Elite Force, but I feel that this hits all the big points. It hits the ship battles, it hits the characters to an extent. It's working on that at least. You know, it hits the politics, it hits just everything fitting in place nice and neatly like it should. Not just like, hey, I'm a big jumble mess of everything from Star Trek history all in one single spot location, and it just feels completely off. But let me know what you guys think of this below. Would you like to see more of this? Would you maybe like to see me stream it, maybe make some videos? Bear in mind that these games do take longer. Normally when I put these videos out, they're about an hour or so long, maybe even an hour and a half, depending on what sort of things are going on. I could easily do a 3 or 4 hour gameplay of this if I had less self-control. At any rate, guys, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.